our economic development and continued growth depends on our water security.
That's why Governor Katie Hobbs made groundwater a top priority, as she explained during my recent sit-down interview with her here in Tucson.
The strength of our current protections are what brings people to invest in our state, families and businesses alike. And we have to expand and take action on those protections to ensure that rural folks who don't have the same protection as urban areas have that.
What do you do to ensure that we have water for 100 years, as your plans usually point out?
Yeah, I think it's important that we don't stick our head in the sand and acknowledge that this is a moment we need to act, and if we don't take action, we'll be at a point of crisis. So we're taking action, and I established the Water Policy Council with a broad group of stakeholders from all different sectors and parties, so that we came up with a slate of recommendations that could get bipartisan support and move through the legislature. The groundwater laws in our rural communities, I think, are the most critical. The Groundwater Management Act, when it was passed in 1980, was critical, but it doesn't go far enough, and these communities have been clamoring for this flexibility to have a say over their groundwater for years, and it's time to take action on that.
How do you then rally that support bipartisan-wise? It's in some ways it looks like it might be a difficult sell to some anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why it was critical that we had bipartisan makeup of our Water Policy Council, including some of those legislators who have been barriers in the past. But these are not partisan issues, and Republicans have introduced legislation that does this in the past, and so I'm hopeful that we can get enough groundswell of support to get it through this year.
Some people point to California having this 25-year policy of making sure you have water but Arizona has 100. I know you're solidly behind the 100. Why do you see it that way?
Well, we're not going to follow California's lead on this. Our Assured Water Supply program of 100 years is what gives people the confidence to invest, make these big billion-dollar investments to come to our state, because they know that our water future is secure far down the road. And it's really the gold standard in these programs across the country, and we need to continue that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
We have good water management in Arizona.
A big reason for that is the Central Arizona Project.
Amazing engineering marvel, bisecting the state 336 miles, starting at Lake Havasu, ending up south of Tucson.
Construction of the Central Arizona Project started in 1973 and was completed 20 years later.
The infrastructure itself hasn't changed a whole lot. The canal is remotely operated from our control center in Phoenix.
It's a $4 billion project that now serves water to more than 80% of the state's population.
14 pumping plants that lift water, a total of about 2,900 feet.
We visited the Twin Peaks pumping plant to get a better breakdown of how each of the 14 plants operate.
What you're looking at right here, this would be called the forebay of the plant. You can see the canal right there. It comes into the forebay. There's intakes here. Also, there's trash rakes that will come and rake up any kind of debris.
So this part of it is built to essentially clean out and
reset.
The water. Okay.
The water flows into the plant, and it flows uphill through a discharge line, and then it continues to flow that way.
So how does the water get from here to customers in southern Arizona?
Tucson has an allotment of 144,000 acre feet. They operate probably one of the biggest recharge and recovery operations in the region. They store that water there, it's recovered through pumps and then into the Tucson water system, and then it goes on to treatment, and then it is dispersed out to customers from there.
An operation that's proven to be effective.
About 30 years that we've been delivering water.
But like any aging system, maintenance is a top priority for CAP.
Every 7 miles is a pool, and there's check structures in between, so we can actually shut that section where this plant is, and we can feed customers for several days on just the water that's there. Our western plants were built with dual discharge lines, so you can take a half plant out and still pump through the other side of the plant.
That's why CAP has a $30 million maintenance budget every year.
Most of our customers are downstream of Lake Pleasant, so if we lose a big plant out west, we can release water from Lake Pleasant and serve all those customers.
Hoping to continue serving Arizonans with clean, safe water for many more years to come.
And I don't think there's any danger of us running out of water at this point.
Now you have an idea of how the Central Arizona Project works to get millions of us our water day in and day out. But we don't have an unlimited source to tap into. As these rings in Lake Mead show, it's been running short for years. Arizona's part of a deal to share what's in the Colorado River Basin. In 2026, this current deal is set to expire, and CAP leaders are in the middle of negotiating the next set of rules.
The more we know, the better we can prepare for what's going to come.
I caught up with Operations Director Brian Bazard. He tells me he's not in the specific room negotiating with other states, but his bosses are working out those details right now. The shortage guidelines set in 2007 inform how Brian and his team has been working for years.
We still have the same mission. We still have to deliver water 336 miles. We have to lift it 2,900 feet, regardless of the amount. It still needs to be done.
For your reference at home, the rules say when Lake Mead's elevation drops to 1,075 feet, Arizona's cut of water, as a junior priority state, is 2.8 million acre feet. Well, that gets reduced overall by 512,000 acre feet. 1 acre foot of water can give 3 families a year's worth of a supply. Brian says the better news right now is even in a shortage, Arizona is just in Tier 1. This graphic from CAP shows how low the levels can get. Brian tells me his hope in the 2026 deal is Arizona and other states can better prepare for if or when they'll have to reduce their water intake.
We had some amazing hydrology in the last year, so I think another goal is really to try to negotiate, to try to find a way to share in the risks and benefits of the system equitably, really within all the basin states.
A quick look at this map. We in Arizona are in the lower basin, along with California, Nevada, and some parts of Mexico. All the players here have to follow the same set of rules and agree to their share of the Colorado.
It's a smaller river. Everyone knows that. Climate change and aridification of the soils makes runoff not as great sometimes. So it's a different system than it was, 50 years ago. I'm hopeful that they will come to an agreement on rules that make sense for everybody.
Closer to our home, Brian says these new rules will in turn help southern Arizona plan and prepare for the future. Of the nearly 3 million acre foot cut Arizona gets, CAP funnels more than 140,000 of these units to Tucson water every year.
The good news is Tucson's been a great partner in helping with conservation efforts, and they generally use less water than they store, so they have what I would call maybe a bank account of water for reliability for its future supply.
Jose Sosaya, KGUN 9.
Water is a precious resource for everyone in Arizona, but especially on land like this, just outside of Marana, and for the farmers who manage it.
We have grown just anything you think you could try to make money on in Arizona.
Arnoldo Burrell handles nearly 5,000 acres of farmland, split between here in Marana and up in Eloy.
About 40 miles and a world of difference. If I'm talking with my Pima County neighbors, we feel lucky to be here.
But things dry up in Pinal County.
It's more along the lines of the famous quote, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over. We're fighting with the federal government, Department of Water Resources, whoever's regulating the water. Give me as much as you can because I need it to sustain my living.
Arizona farmers rely on groundwater pumped from wells. Across most of the state, groundwater use is largely unregulated. But around urban centers are active management areas, or AMAs, basins where groundwater limits are imposed.
A gradual ratcheting down of our water allotments has been dictated to us by the state. Every 5 years or so, we get a minuscule cutback.
The goal is to balance what farmers need now with what growing cities will need down the road.
We sit on top of a very strong dependable aquifer.
Burrell says the Tucson AMA is well managed
It lets you sleep a little better at night.
and well positioned compared to Pinal County.
The Eloy Basin does not recharge anymore like it used to because the Santa Cruz River doesn't dead end in Eloy any longer. The water's allotted a lot tighter up there. You have to pick and choose your crops. You have to pick and choose your land. Basically, we can farm at best 40% of the district successfully.
Now, with Arizona facing Colorado river cuts and agriculture near the bottom of the Central Arizona Project priority system, CAP water for farmers has dried up. Groundwater is essentially their only lifeline.
We don't want to kill the goose, even though she's not really laying a golden egg anymore. We don't want to kill the goose. We want to keep the goose alive, and you can't do that by overpumping. Voluntarily, we're even increasing our cutbacks. On top of losing the CAP water, we're going to do what's good for the future generations, and the future of our industry.
A future that looks cloudy, likely shaped by more cutbacks to come. Reporting in Marana, Ryan Fish, KGUN 9.
We're looking at a growing state with limited water supplies, and so we're trying to figure out how to have good quality, reliable water all the time for everybody, and that's a challenge.
Dr. Sharon Megdal is the director of the Water Resources Research Center at the U of A. She's on one of the governor's boards for water policy, and she spent years focusing on managing water, both here and internationally, and she's not too concerned about it.
I say with confidence that we here in our region are in relatively good shape because we have good water management, we have supplies of multiple supplies to draw upon, but we have to use it all wisely and behave wisely.
Those multiple water supplies are the focus of the city's new One Water 2100 plan.
The idea is we've got to look at our water supplies holistically as One Water and figure out how to make the best use of those different water supplies. So we don't need to use drinking quality water for our outdoor gardening.
And Megdal says Tucson is pretty good about that. When drinking water goes down the drain at your home or office, it becomes wastewater, which means it will get reused.
We have treated wastewater that the county treats, that gets treated further, that gets recharged, and that's what irrigates a lot of our ball fields, our school grounds, our cemeteries.
That's the reclaimed water, like what you see at the Sweetwater wetlands, that will go through the recharge basin next door. Once it does around as irrigation, some of that reclaimed water also goes into the Santa Cruz River. But the drinking water it all started out as isn't unlimited. In Tucson, most of it comes from the Colorado River as part of the Central Arizona Project.
It goes down into the aquifer, mixes the aquifer, then they pump it out and deliver it to us. And so most of the drinking water supplies in the Tucson area is really recharged and recovered Colorado River water.
While that's worked for a while, though, Megdal says it won't work forever.
The Colorado River is looking less reliable than it has looked because 40 million people depend on it one way or another, and it's just not producing the water that it has, and so we have to figure out how to adjust.
She says Tucson Water has about a 6-year supply of water stored underground, and we do have the ability to pump some groundwater as a last resort.
And that's our insurance. But we don't want to draw on that insurance water because once we do, it won't be replenished by nature.
Instead, Megdal says it's up to all of us to focus on conservation and the future, knowing we could do our part to save and better use the water we have.
I want people to be excited about water without getting alarmed about it. So I don't think it's time for alarm at all. I really do not. But I do think people need to think about it.
In Tucson, I'm Claire Graham, KGUN 9.
We're at Tucson's Randolph North Golf Course, and you might wonder, how do you keep a golf course healthy in a dry desert climate? Well, the answer is, it requires much more precision than just turning on a hose.
Chris Soto measures how moist the soil is, right down to the decimal point.
38.7, that's very high. It means the soil underneath at a 3-inch depth is really saturated. So we're not looking to water anytime soon. probably until next week.
Soto is chief agronomist for Tucson City Golf Courses. On our visit to the Randolph North course, it was feeling the benefits of 2 days of steady winter rain. Soto says that sort of rain is much better than the short, sharp cloudburst of a summer monsoon.
Monsoon, you can get it down so fast that it's just running off. It's still moisture, but it's not allowing to penetrate. So nice, slow, gradual rain throughout over 2 days is really nice, really pulls air through the soil and kind of gives you a good saturation. And it'll give you this bright green appearance as well.
Powerful pumps push water to precise sprinkler heads throughout the course. The city is not putting drinking water on this turf. It's water reclaimed from sewage, still filtered and disinfected, but not certified for drinking. Computers control where and when the water hits the turf.
So I could say, I just want to water greens tonight and just do that. I just want to water tees tonight and just do that. Or I only want to water greens half the time. So you tailor it and fine tune it as you're out there and you're seeing the growing conditions in different areas on how you want to water that night.
Right now, parts of the course are yellow as one type of grass goes dormant for the winter and another type is yet to green up. Soto estimates Randolph North probably uses 30 to 40 million gallons a year, but he knows anyone who operates a golf course has to work to make every drop count.
Golf course superintendents and people who are doing golf courses, they're really trying on a daily basis conserving the water, whether it's using measurements, using data. We're really trying to control how we put our water out most efficiently and how we use it going forward.
In Tucson at Randolph North Golf Course, Craig Smith, KGUN 9.
So there's a lot that goes into testing Arizona's groundwater. Testers will take this vial, they'll fill it up with water, and sometimes they even put preservatives in them. And all of this costs at least $4,000 for each testing site. But it's all to make sure that Arizona's groundwater is clean and healthy. Filling bottle after bottle.
It'll take us approximately 1 hour to fill all of these bottles.
Hydrologist Lauren Bader is collecting around 7 gallons of groundwater. Some of that is in more specific bottles.
The reason we use these is because they have a rubber gasket that allows us to purge air from the sample.
She's looking for contaminants. Some of the most common contaminants the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality says are arsenic and uranium.
Those are things that are naturally occurring because we live in a mineralized state. There are other contaminants that we've added, right, like some nitrates.
Trevor Bajori is the ADEQ's director of the Water Quality Division. You can't see the contaminants, he says, but that's why they test groundwater.
So the deeper you go, the less likely you're going to find changes because that water is more consistent. Upper aquifers closer to the surface can have a more rapid change in them.
He says that depends on which part of the state they're in, but he says some groundwater hasn't changed for decades.
Every time you pump an aquifer, that groundwater is going to change, and that can affect the quality of the water, right, as it's getting pulled from different parts of the aquifer.
After collecting samples, Bajori says they're analyzed in a lab. The ADEQ says their sampling helps more than 330,000 Arizonans who rely on private wells for drinking water. Because they want to grow their database, Bajori says it's important that more people give them access to their wells.
The more we know about the thousands of constituents that are out there, the more we're going to expand our monitoring, the portfolio of pollutants that we monitor for.
And what happens when they're done sampling that water is they'll take that information, put it into a database that they share with private well owners and sister agencies that focus on water. Reporting in Benson, Andrew Christensen, KGUN 9.
I'm here in the town of Marana at the Water Reclamation facility, and it treats about 900,000 gallons of wastewater every day.
So this plant is a biological nutrient removal plant, a conventional activated sludge, a 5-stage Barton flow. So all that fancy talk is just saying we're using microbiology to clean the water.
The facility even weeding out things flushed down the toilet that shouldn't be.
All that, the rags and debris, kids' toys,
Really?
Everything
Kids'
that
toys?
Kids' toys. You know, if you ever lose one down there, goldfish. Yep.
It's all
So
down there.
yeah, it's all down there.
There it is.
Besides fishing out toys and goldfish, an increase in demand has also been a challenge.
So some of the biggest challenges we face are that growing need for more and more infrastructure and maintaining the current infrastructure. You know, we're constantly adding new sewer lines, new capacity, but we can't forget the old stuff either. We have to be able to maintain and operate the existing infrastructure while balancing that growth and installing new infrastructure.
Prior to Marana using water from the Central Arizona Project, residents relied on groundwater. Now, as the town grows, they're hoping to modify their designated assured water supply with the Arizona Department of Water Resources.
We're working internally to address some of the objections. The next step is the review that's going to take 60 days. So hopefully, we're very hopefully to get this completed by probably March.
Luckily, water officials from Marana say the town has done pretty well so far with their water supply.
Our situation in Marana has been very good for a long time. There's a vast aquifer, and that's what we depend on. We draw all of our water from our wells.
As for the future of this facility, they hope to expand it and treat up to 3 million gallons a day. From the town of Marana, Danelle Veslick, KGUN 9.
For Nogales, I think we're kind of lucky because we have two different sources of water.
Those sources are groundwater and water from the Santa Cruz River. Nogales' smaller population, as well as Santa Cruz County averaging the second most rain of Arizona's 15 counties, adds to their advantage. Alejandro Barcenas, the city's public works director, tells me Nogales is also fortunate to have a state-guaranteed water supply.
The city of Nogales has an assured water supply designation for 100 years through the state.
And I get an inside look at how the water gets to the city. At the Santa Cruz pumping plant, the wells outside the plant pump the groundwater from underneath the Santa Cruz River bed. Inside the city's water tank, it gets treated so it's safe to drink. Then it comes to this very loud pumping station where the water is then sent to the city of Nogales. Even though on this day the water tank is full, Barcenas says Nogales and the rest of the state still needs to be mindful of their water usage.
We're in the desert, so we cannot be expecting to have the use that they have in Florida, where they have plenty of water. So those are things that have to be rethink on the statewide.
Reporting in Nogales, Adam Clapp, KGUN 9.
Water conservation efforts here in Cochise County typically focus on the San Pedro River and recharging it. But here in Naco, the Naco Sanitary District is focused on saving this aquifer, the Naco-Bisbee Sole Source Aquifer. The lagoon ponds behind me help treat water here for the community.
Everybody's been ignoring this aquifer.
The Naco-Bisbee Aquifer is a sole source aquifer that provides water for Naco, Arizona, Naco, Sonora, Mexico, and Bisbee. Chairperson Stephen Day for the Naco Sanitary District says their wastewater lagoons hold 86,000 gallons of effluent water.
If we keep an eye on it and do proper development, we can maintain control of this aquifer stability for, I would have to say, indefinitely.
The threat to the groundwater is from a sulfate plume that's moving from south of Warren towards the well Bisbee uses for their water in Naco.
It's a completely stable aquifer except for the sulfate plume. That is our only threat. 50% of the wells in this aquifer are contaminated to the point of not being able to be used because of the sulfate.
Vice Chair of the Naco Sanitary District, Charles Bainey, says this problem can be fixed by not pumping the water or by back pumping the contaminated water and treating it before putting it in a treatment pond.
We need to clean the sulfate plume and assure water adequacy for the next 100 years.
Behind this fence on the Naco Sanitary District's property is a flow of water that's actually treated effluent from Bisbee. If it's actually treated a little bit more, it could be beneficial beneficial to the Naco-Bisbee aquifer through its recharge. But the city of Bisbee has partnered with Cochise County to create the Bisbee Effluent Plant, which will take recharge water down to the border to help the San Pedro River.
It's 12 miles from here to the river. The intent is really to take as much of that water as we can and recharge it as close to the Mexican border and to the river as possible.
The Bisbee Effluent Plant is still in the planning phase and will have a pipeline run through Naco to get to the border. Mark Apel, Environmental Projects Coordinator for Cochise County, says this speeds up the natural process that could take 100 years for the water to move the 12 miles naturally.
Sort of shortcutting the route that the water would normally take through the ground. There may be plenty of water under our feet. The river depends on that first, 10, 20, 30 feet.
Bisbee Mayor Ken Budge is the chairman of the Upper San Pedro Partnership, says the San Pedro River has been studied for 25 years, but there's still more that can be done, which is why the city and county partnered for the Bisbee Effluent Project.
It's just another part of working in sections along the river to make it more and more viable.
Day and Bainey say this project could be a threat to the sole source aquifer because the water is being taken and placed in another location.
We don't want our aquifer's water to be used in any of those other two aquifers until such a time that they show us maybe they've got a little bit more responsible use for their water. Our goal is to fix what's broken. There's a lot broken here.
At the end of the day, everybody I spoke to's main concern is how to conserve water and protect the wildlife that live and pass through Cochise County. However, the how and the what to do is what separates people because there's so many different ideas. In Naco, Alexis Ramanjulu, KGUN 9.